When did your creepy gut feeling save your life? Not me, but my mum saved me once when she woke up in the night and went looking for my biological dad because he wasn't in bed. She saw him just outside my door staring at me, and she described it as disturbing and said it made her nauseous. She didn't know what made her say it, but she told him to get away from me. A few years later in 2010, my half-sister finally broke down and revealed that my biological dad had been molesting her for 12 years. My sister told me a few years ago that he threatened her, that he would start on me and my other sister if she did anything. There's been a few times where I hadn't listened to my gut, but one sticks out where I did. I used to live in a smaller Minnesotan town down near some train tracks and a bike/running path that extends out of town into the woods. One evening I'm sitting outside on my porch drinking a couple of beers with my buddy. Two dudes walk up on us kind of out of nowhere, and immediately something seemed off with them. It's a college town and drunk people come up onto your porch a lot or randomly just say hello on their way to or from the bars downtown. But these dudes had a badass vibe to them. I had a little black Louisville slugger lying next to me on the porch, so I grabbed and just held it across my lap. One dude asks us, "You guys got an extra smoke?" Buddy says nope. The other guy comes up real close almost onto the porch and says, "Did you see my face?" I just kept looking forward, but not directly at him, and just said, "Nah man, we didn't see anything." He said something like "good lil punk ass," and they both walked away. 2 nights later I'm sitting in my living room with the same buddy and the local news is on. 2 guys arrested for robbing and stabbing a man a couple nights back on the trail down by the train tracks next to where I live. My buddy had looked at their faces coming up, and I had seen the dude clear as day that had asked for the smoke. It was those same freaking guys. Was hunting for early morals and King Bolit's last May up near Clay Elm, no luck, so went further over towards Hancock. About 2/3 up a hillside I felt like I was being watched. I slowly realized that I couldn't hear any animals making noise. Hackles raised, I immediately started down the most direct path to my car. 1 trail above where I was parked I saw a partial juvenile male deer skeleton under a large conifer. As I double timed it past, I looked up and saw the rest of the bones and sinews slung up in the branches. Out came the knife and I slowed down, turning and scanning every few yards until I got into my car and booked it out of there. The next day 2 mountain bikers were attacked by a cougar and one was killed very near to the area I was hiking. I carry a handgun now for my mushroom hunts. I was in Turkey for vacation when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I made friends with some other tourists, but also some locals, all around the age range of 8 to 16. These 2 local guys were about 16, and at one point during the late afternoon they asked if I wanted to go with them to go kart outside of the hotel area, and I agreed. Approximately 30 seconds of walking along with them, I got the most chilling feeling I've ever had in my life. All the hairs on my skin rose up, and I had this super uneasy feeling deep in my gut. It actually felt like some supernatural force was beckoning me to dip. I turned on my heels and sprinted so fast to get back to the hotel. I didn't even look back. When I returned, my mother asked where I had been. I told her I was taking a rough crap. Oddly enough, I was quite fond of those guys before this happened. But, thinking about this in retrospect, why would 2 local 16-year-olds have any genuine interest in go-karting with a young 8-year-old tourist? I feel like I may have dodged a bullet. We may never know. I'm a petite woman and was 19 at the time. Had a late shift that ended at 10 PM. Hit the grocery before my walk home, about 10 blocks. I've got arms full of groceries and notice a car drive past me in the opposite direction. Had it pull a U-turn behind me and park. I tell myself, probably just getting home from work too, but then I hear footsteps behind me. I turn around, and it's a man in his 30s, I'd guess. He doesn't say anything, but stops walking. When I stopped walking, I keep walking, bit faster now, and I can hear him speed up too. I turn around again and say, "Hey man, what's up?" He says nothing. I turn around and keep walking, almost at a mini jog pace, and I hear him speed up too. I was about 4 blocks away from home. The adrenaline kicked in. I dropped my bags and booked it. Made it home. Told my boyfriend what was happening. As he goes outside to find the guy, dude drives by in his car. right past my house. We call the cops, give them a description, and the operator tells us they've had other calls about the same guy. Really hoping he never actually caught someone. Really hoping his creepy ass wound up in jail. Really happy I listened to my gut. I woke up at 3 AM once sitting upright in bed. I felt on alert and my heart raced when I saw that my cat was on alert too, wide awake by my feet with his ears perked up. But I didn't see or hear anything weird. Something didn't feel right and I couldn't relax. So I got up and went to the kitchen, turned on some lights, and ate food, even though I wasn't that hungry. Eventually went back to bed. We discovered the next morning that someone had stopped while in the process of using some kind of tool to silently cut a big hole in the glass window in the living room. They were trying to break in right next to the bedroom. I think the lights I turned on scared them away. Edited to add that we had 3 long years of issues with our neighbors. They repeatedly came into our property and were pissed that we put up a 9-foot fence to keep them out. This attempted break-in happened right after the fence went up and 2 days before they all moved out. Glad those pieces of crap are long gone. I'm a firefighter. We got called out to a tree fire started by fallen power lines. We pull up in the truck and I'm trusting that my driver and crew leader are doing their job and have good situational awareness. We get out of the truck and we're parked next to a set of power lines, not fallen. It's a very windy night and I can see the line swinging, so I voice my concerns to my crew leader who says it'll be fine. We get out, hose out, risk of the tree fire catching onto a house outweighing potential risk of arcing plus the line disconnected when it fell, and I'm on the branch ready to start putting it out with 2 others near me when I get a chill. I look up, see the line swinging violently and yell, "Everyone freaking move." As the 3 of us sprint and dive out of the way, we hear a thwip and crack, and sure enough the line we were under came loose and stayed connected to the power pole. If I hadn't got that chill, chances are we would have had 3 fried furies. Had a friend who said we should go to this party he was invited to by a classmate of his. We ended driving out to it. We noticed the neighborhood was not too pleasant and sketchy. We saw that house had some lights on in backyard, but kind of quiet for a party. I decided that we should not go, since something felt really off. Friend ended finding the classmate that invited him got robbed and threatened when he went to party. It ended up being a fake party. When I was in middle school and around 14 years old, I was returning home. I lived like 5 minutes away from said school and I noticed there was a man following me. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at his phone and he wore a cap, so I wasn't able to see his face fully. Anyways, he gave off this weird vibe. I reached my apartment building and the guy was still behind me. I know mostly everyone who lives in my neighborhood and I couldn't recall him. Last moment I decided I wasn't going to go inside the hallway. I turned around and went to a store where I waited for my mom to come. A few weeks after, there was some news about an 11-year-old girl from my school who was raped in the building right behind mine 2 days after the incident. The guy they caught looked a lot like the guy who had followed me, and given the time frame and the proximity, there's a high chance that it was him. My daughter was 1.5 years at the time. She had a cold, but bedtime went off without a hitch. I woke up in the middle of the night that night, really uncomfortable and anxious. Something was off, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I got up, had a midnight snack, tried to calm my nerves. I decided to check on my kids, who shared a room, before trying to go back to sleep. I get in there and immediately I hear a light sound coming from her crib, wheezing. It was so quiet, there was no way to hear it outside of the room. I got her up and saw that her breathing was fast and labored. I took her to the hospital, where she ended up with an overpass stay, oxygen, and nebulizer treatments because her oxygen had dipped. She was diagnosed with reactive airway disease due to the cold, which triggered the asthma attack. Not me, but when my mum was a teenager on 18th November 1987, she was going to London to visit a friend. It was around 7:20 PM and she decided she was going to take a taxi instead of going by tube because it didn't feel right. King's Cross Tube Station. 10 minutes later the whole station caught on fire and 30 out of the 40 people died. If she had decided to take the tube she would likely have died. While I was walking home, Wasn't late and I'm from a pretty safe area, but it was that time of year when it starts to get dark really early, so felt kind of ominous. Anyway, I pass this guy in a red sweater and red tracksuit bottoms, and he looks at me funny. Maybe he's high, maybe he's drunk. Either way, something not quite right about him. I keep going. Look behind me, he's still there. Cross the road. He crosses with me. As soon as I turn a corner, I sprint to my apartment complex and run into the coded gate and wait. He rocks up a minute later and stares at me through the gate. He just stares at me for a good 10 or so seconds, then runs back the way he came. Shivers. Some dude get off the bus at the same stop as me. It's about 8 PM and October, so it's quite dark out already. He had spoken to me on the bus, one line about nice weather. Anyway, he gets off the bus after me. I cross the road and make a mental note of him walking the opposite way to me. I make sure to watch him walking away. Something in my gut says not to trust him. To get to my house, I have to walk up a hill with a path alongside a high stone wall. It is secluded. Usually I listen to music as I walk. I decide not to this time. I'm about halfway up when I get this awful feeling. I take out my phone, dial my mother's number, and as I do I hear fast steps of someone running up behind me. I know it's the guy before I turn around, and as I do he is literally running full speed towards me. I look him dead in the eyes, ready to fight for my life. As I do this, my mother answers her phone and I say, "Hi mom." He slows right down to a light jog and says evening as he jogs past me. I ask my mom to stay on the line. Her BF comes out to meet me at the top of the hill. The guy's nowhere to be seen. He was definitely running up behind me to strike me, and by turning to face him, I'm certain it threw him off.